You got a 13th? Is that the one you printed from
Yes,
your
there
email?
was.
Okay. Let me go ahead and grab that just for a minute until we grab another one. She's coming up. Thank you, Cindy. Regular meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission, November 13th, 2013. Can we have roll call, Ms. Perkins?
Commissioner O'Meara, Commissioner Lee,
Here.
Commissioner Garcia,
Present.
Commissioner Patterson,
Here.
Commissioner Lukes,
Here.
Commissioner Perez,
Here.
Commissioner Lucero.
Not here.
So there's 5 members here. We have a quorum.
Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Approval of the agenda. Do we have any changes to the agenda as presented?
I have a couple of questions.
Okay.
Just so I understand, the agenda for November 13th and the agenda for November 6th are basically the same? Just the date was changed, or?
Yes, they should be the same except for the date.
Okay. There's 2 under public hearings, case number A and B, the case numbers. Are those correct? In looking at the attachments, case number PZ 2013-16, and what it has under there, it looks like it should be case number PZ 213-6. In looking at the, unless there's a typo, and looking at the Planning and Zoning Commission staff report, which is MRS, which is,
Oh, mine says 16 on it.
is it?
For the,
Well, there's, well,
You know what, for some reason that got kind of jumbled up there with the staff report. I don't quite know what happened. It looks like the document was open and kind of got messed up as far as that case number and subject. So I think the MRS one should be 2013-16.
is, well,
So the staff report should be amended to 2013-16?
Yeah, and the subject, the title there got messed up. See
Well,
how it,
just to go back to, okay, just so I'm not confused here. Number B, case number PZ 213-18 should be 213-16.
I think 8A, on the staff report for 8A says 2013-6, and the agenda says 2013-16.
That's right. So I'm saying,
oh, okay.
So, Ms. Perkins, are you saying that the
Well,
staff?
I may be messed up here.
so just to coincide with the reports, I think it should reflect 213-6 for 8A, and for 8B, it should be 2013-16.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Those are the only changes that I saw.
Does that make sense,
eagle eye.
Martha?
Yeah, I'm still trying to find my one staff report.
What we have in front of us is the staff report for Mike Tarleton.
Right,
The number on that staff report is 2013-16.
okay, that's fine.
On the agenda, it's
It's
labeled 2013-18.
Okay,
So if we're going to make the staff reports match the agenda, under public hearings, 8A, that case number would be corrected to 2013-6, and 8B would be corrected to 2013-16.
okay.
Can I have a motion to amend the agenda?
I'll make a motion to amend the agenda as presented.
Second it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
there's no other corrections to the agenda, we'll move on to approval of meeting minutes. The first meeting minutes that we have are agenda item 5A, June 5th, 2013. Are there any changes to the meeting minutes from June 5th, 2013?
I do have, Mr. Chairman, just one change. On the first page, under approval of meeting minutes, it indicates Commissioner Garcia made a motion to approve the minutes, but it doesn't say which minutes, and I think it should reflect May 2013 minutes.
Okay.
That's the only correction I had.
Can I have a motion to amend the minutes as noted?
So moved.
Second?
Second?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Agenda item 5B, July 3rd, 2013, meeting minutes.
I have one question on that one, and that's on the first page under approval of agenda. It does indicate that the motion passed, and it indicated the voting members was Lee, Garcia, and Lukes, but I don't know, Mr. Chairman, if you voted on that as well or not.
Most likely.
So I believe it needs to add
Patterson.
Patterson to the approval. That's the only change I have on that one.
Can I have a motion to approve the July 3rd minutes as amended?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
September 4th, meeting minutes, agenda item 5C.
I have one change on that one as well. Page 2, see, I'm doing my homework here. Page 2, item 8, matters from the Planning and Zoning Committee. I think that is listed twice, the discussion of possible amendments, the first two sentences. I think that it's listed twice. So I would strike one.
Okay.
Of those comments.
We have a motion to approve the minutes as amended. Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Agenda item 5D, October 2nd, 2013.
I might as well go 4 for 4 here. I just asked the question, are we needing to have minutes since there wasn't a quorum? Do we still have to have something like this? And if so, can it be approved since there wasn't a quorum? We're all going to, those that weren't here are going to abstain probably, even though there was no action items.
We would ask that they be approved, Mr. Chairman, since they, while it wasn't an official meeting, the group did convene. And we would ask the people who weren't here to recuse themselves from the approval.
Don't move to approve it.
So the three commissioners that were present for that meeting need to be the ones that approve the minutes, since they were there, right?
But
there's not a quorum.
there wasn't a quorum.
Even if you had 3 here,
That's
you wouldn't
true.
have the votes to pass and carry the minutes.
Yeah, it was more discussion.
Chalk it up as discussion.
So in October, we didn't have a meeting, is that correct?
We didn't have any cases. We didn't have any public hearings. There were 3 commissioners here, and we reviewed a number of items by discussion.
Yeah, we just had a discussion. We didn't have a public hearing.
So I believe it shouldn't be reflect as minutes, but more as information to be for discussion. I don't know. I mean,
I think similarly in August, we didn't have a meeting, not because there wasn't a quorum, but because there wasn't anything on the agenda.
So I think we could simply take a vote not to approve them as minutes. Mr. James?
If the commission is more comfortable, you can move to strike the word minutes, and we could just call it a record.
So moved.
Second.
And is that record, so we don't take a vote to approve meeting minutes?
No, you can approve the meeting record.
Do only the commissioners who were at that meeting?
Yes.
You and I.
I can't move them.
So let's go ahead and just put it in the vote as, 3 will abstain and 2 will vote, right? Okay. So can we have a motion to approve the October 2nd meeting record?
I move.
We have a motion. Can we have a second?
It'll have to be you, Doug.
I'll second it. And I think you would do a roll call vote.
Okay, Commissioner Lukes,
Yes.
Commissioner Patterson,
Yes.
2-0, it's approved.
Agenda item 6 is citizens forum. Citizens wishing to speak shall limit their comments to 5 minutes or less at the chairman's discretion. No action may be taken. Is there anybody here that would like to speak at a citizens forum? I see none. We'll move on to item number 7, matters from staff. None?
No.
We'll move
We
on
have
to
one,
agenda item.
excuse me, Mr. Chairman, we have one. Last night, last night at the council meeting, the mayor and council asked if those members of the commission whose terms are expiring in December would indicate, you have to be on the record here tonight, but shortly to the mayor, whether you wish to continue after December. And I suppose, I think we have one commissioner who is on overtime already, and we would ask that if that commissioner wants to continue to be on overtime or be replaced, he similarly express that to the mayor as soon as you make that decision.
Do you have the names of the commissioners who are expiring in December?
I think that Commissioner Lee, Commissioner Patterson, I don't know who else, and I think that Commissioner Perez is on overtime.
Thank you for that. So we'll simply let the mayor know if we intend to remain on the Planning and Zoning Commission or if we desire to.
Yeah, it's just in terms of if you're going to stay, then the mayor would need to know that, and as people are leaving, this isn't the easiest job to recruit for, so we need to start with the recruiting process. And if I've forgotten the name, I'll send an email to whichever commissioner I left out.
Okay.
I thought there were 3 in one, maybe there were 3 altogether.
Thank you. If there's no other matters from staff, we'll move on to our first public hearing. Agenda item 8A, case number P&Z 2013-6. We have a new script to follow. We'll give it a shot for tonight. Next item on our agenda is a public hearing for case number 2013-6. This is a application for a lot split and a conditional use permit within the HCPD Highway Corridor Protection Zone of the town of Taos. The commission's decision on this case must be based on the criteria contained in Title 16 of the Town Code, known as the Land Use Development Code. Hearing procedures. The hearing tonight will be conducted under procedures developed from New Mexico case law. This hearing procedures are intended to protect the due process rights of all parties. Parties and witnesses will be identified. All persons who expect to offer testimony will be sworn in, and testimony will be given under oath. All persons offering testimony will be subject to cross-examination by other parties. Please remember that the purpose of the cross-examination is to ask questions and solicit relevant facts. The Commission intends to limit testimony to information relevant to the matter being considered, and the Commission chairperson may limit redundant or repetitive testimony. Let's see. Why don't we go ahead and hear from the applicant? I'm not sure we want to read this script every time we have a public hearing.
And I have a question too. The chair will now poll the commissioners to potential conflicts of interest or expired communications. We have to do it for each case, or is it just understood that any commissioner that would have conflict of interest would just disclose that? Or does the chairman have to poll every one of us?
I would say that's Yeah, I would say that's okay. I would say that's at our discretion, how we choose to run the meeting. I would say for each public hearing, it's probably the okay thing to do. So I would simply ask the members of the commission, does anyone here have a potential conflict of interest in this case?
Nope.
If there are none, I think we'll go ahead and ask the applicant to go ahead and step up and make his presentation. And we'll go ahead. If you can stand at the podium. Sure. You're being broadcast on public TV, so you can see your shining face. And Martha, would you please swear in the applicant?
Okay, your name?
Hugh McQueen.
And do you swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Please tell us about your case.
I have a business south of town on 114 Estes Road. It's 3 businesses under one roof. It's one corporation, MRS Incorporated. We have Taos Lighting, Taos Electrical Supply, and Kelso McQueen Electric. It's electrical contracting. We have an acre of property, or did, and we took part of it out on a lot split years back. And back in 2001, the owner, Steve Kelso at the time, we brought in a home in the back, and the corporation did, and that's where he lived as the chief officer, majority stockholder. Steve's passed away on January 4th, and we have the home, and at this time, the corporation doesn't feel that they want to entertain having renters or be in that. So what I'd like to do is be able to have a lot split and deed that and sell the property with the residents on it and that quarter acre. I have the site plan, and I have a tentative or preliminary draft, if I can present it, or...
Is there a site plan in our application packet?
This is it. Or,
We don't have a large format copier, and at the last hearing, I gave it to him so that he could present it, and then I didn't get it back, so we couldn't make copies then either.
oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry. So it is not in your packet, but he's willing to walk around and show you.
This is the residency.
It is. This is the building, commercial building. This is the residence back here. There's also, I have a picture of it. I know that's not part of it. If you'd like to see it, it's in the packet. A picture of the residence, landscape. Oh, okay, fine. We're tied into city sewer with both of them.
And then you
I
have
have
a
a well
share.
agreement. Yes, I have a well share agreement with me. I'll show it to you.
We have
It's in the packet.
Yeah, it's in the packet.
Okay, thank you.
Should I pass it down, or?
Anthony, you want to take a look?
I know where it's the location.
Here's the survey, it's preliminary, and once it's approved, he'll do a permanent.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for the applicant?
I have a couple of questions.
Commissioner?
In reference to the well sharing agreement, does that indicate there that that would still be enforced with the lot split and sharing of the well?
It does.
Okay.
It does.
It's just a question.
Sure.
You don't need to supply that. I do have a second question, and this is directed to the staff. Just so I understand in reference to how the Highway Corridor Protection District zone works, who monitors, in reading the guidelines and so forth, it does indicate that the visual appearance of the home, there should not be no visual appearance of a home occupation on the lot. And so I'm just curious, and then it has a home occupation shall involve the primary sale of goods and services. So how is that all monitored by the town, and if this is approved and so forth? Or is it, I guess I don't understand very well how the zone works in reference to a corridor district.
Okay, I'm not sure that I understand your question either.
Well, I'm trying to determine, I read something here and it says it can appear as a personal residence, but yet, once it's sold, who's to stop or the purchaser from utilizing it as a home and make it look like a residence in that corridor?
Well, this is the applicant's request, I believe, is he came in and he asked for a lot split, which I can do administratively, but I cannot allow the primary use of one of these lots to be residential in the zone. So we decided that he needed to come before the Planning and Zoning Commission and ask for a special use permit, which would allow this lot split and allow a residential home to be the primary use on a lot rather than a business.
Okay, so it's a special
So
use.
that's the reason for the special use request.
Conditional use permit.
And part of this then is the lot split to go along with it, because you can't do the lot split without having the special use permit being approved.
So whoever purchased that, if they decided to sell that property, does the special use permit doesn't follow with it, does it?
It stays with the property.
It does?
The conditional use permit stays with the property.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That's all I had.
So when the
Commissioner Perez.
home was put on the property, it was town limits or county?
I think at the time, it wasn't town, it was the.
Extraterritorial?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was the extraterritorial.
And then it's in the town now.
Any other questions for the applicant?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
You want to hang on to these ones?
Ms. Perkins, did you want to present anything additional for the staff report?
I would like the staff report to become part of the record. I also have a typo for some reason underneath the subject. I don't know what happened there, so I have made that change.
Highway corridor protection zone instead of pro zone?
Yeah, I don't know what happened there.
Okay. Do any of the commissioners have questions for staff? If none,
I've got a question, sorry.
Commissioner Lee.
Are we approving a special use permit and a conditional use permit?
Just conditional use permit.
Is it, did I make a typo? I'm used to calling these special use permits. In the municipality I worked before, that's what we called them, and here they're called conditional use. So I wouldn't be surprised if I interchanged the two.
We are
It is
approving-
conditional use, I believe.
So we could correct the staff report to say, under subject, is special use application for a residential use. This is a conditional use application.
Correct.
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chairman.
Let's see. Before we make a motion, I think we need to go ahead and allow anybody from the public to speak, if there is anybody. Is anyone here signed up to speak on this application? If none, then we'll go ahead and close the public hearing and see if there's any other discussion from the commission. If there's not, then we're ready for a motion.
Motion to approve case number PNZ 2013-6 based on findings of facts, staff report, and to issue a conditional use permit for residential use on that lot split.
We have a motion. I'll go ahead and ask if we have a second.
Second.
We have a second. We can have any further discussion if we need to. If there's no further discussion, I think we can go ahead and have a roll call vote.
Commissioner Lee,
Yes.
Commissioner Garcia,
Yes.
Commissioner Patterson,
Yes.
Commissioner Lukes,
Yes.
Commissioner Perez.
Yes.
5-0. This is approved as far as the preliminary hearing. It will come back for a final hearing in front of the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Moon. With that, we can move on to agenda item 8B, Del Norte Properties. And next item on our agenda is a public hearing for case number 2013-16. This is a application for a rezone from C2 General Commercial to R14 Multifamily Residential. Property is 1.501 acres, located within the Historic District Overlay Zone of the Town of Taos. We can go ahead and hear from the applicant if they'd like to make a presentation. Okay.
Please state your name for the record.
Mark Yarovitz.
And do you swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Before we begin, do any members of the commission have a potential conflict of interest in this case?
Mr. Chairman, there's a possible conflict of interest.
Okay. I think if you're going to recuse yourself from this case, I think usually we either step back and leave the room or step back and sit in the back of the room. Is that really necessary, Mr. James?
Depends on what the commissioner is comfortable with. Certainly the recusal means no voting, and typically it means no questioning. So Commissioner Garcia, for this purpose, has no function on this case.
Okay. So for the record, let's note that Commissioner Garcia has recused himself from this case. So, let's see.
Mr. Chairman, the Town Attorney's Office would also appreciate the question for the record regarding ex parte communication.
Okay. Let's see. Do any members of the commission have a potential conflict of interest or ex parte communication with the applicant?
No.
None?
No.
None.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Yarovitz, please tell us about your case.
Thank you, Commissioners. What started out as a simple project got more complicated based upon the fact that the property we're dealing with.
He asked if you had been sworn in.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Keep going. I'm sorry.
The property we're dealing with has a split zone on it. As you can see from the package, that the back half of the property, approximately 0.4 acres, is zoned R14. The front half is zoned commercial, C2. This property came into the family of Mr. Tarleton. I'm the agent for this project. They have owned this property in the Tarleton family since the early 1900s. The zoning was placed on top of the property while they were still in possession of it. Zoning came into the Taos area in I believe the late 60s. I'm not exactly sure when that occurred. Just recently, in the last few months, the Tarleton family swapped properties with other family members, so the entire property now is under the ownership of Del Norte Properties, LLC. When we first came in to look at doing this project as a multifamily, part of the new project, the new construction, was crossing over the C2 line. And at that point, we were doing a conditional use permit in the commercial zone, but as the code requires, any conditional use permit for multifamily housing requires a PUD. And it still was a little too complicated. I met with staff on this issue, and it was recommended to us that we do a zone change to all R14 for this project and to allow the two buildings up front to remain as conditional uses as commercial buildings as they are. So this application is about a zone change to make the multifamily project go through a little bit more smoothly than a split zone. I think the staff report that was done is very accurate and correct, and I don't want to repeat a lot of the information that's already in there. What I would like to do is add some things to the project that, add some things to your packet that I recently obtained.
Mr. Yerovitz, can I ask one question?
Yes.
So our application says this is it's an application for a rezone from C2 to R14.
Correct.
Are we also approving a conditional use?
The applicant asked for a conditional use. I actually did not see it when I was reviewing it. It's one page because he put them together. But the way I was reviewing this was just to go for a rezoning and to grandfather in the existing uses that are commercial uses onto that property. The commission may have a different stance on that. That was staff's, that's in my staff report. You may feel differently, and you may want him to get conditional use permit for those commercial uses. It's my understanding that that the two buildings, one started out as a bakery and turned into a cafe, which it currently still is, and the other one was an office, a professional office, and it still is, and that those uses were in existence before the zoning code went into effect in 1974. So I felt, given that it was in the historic district area, the overlay, and given that those uses predated the zoning code, that those uses and those buildings could be grandfathered in.
That's
Mr. James, if this was noticed as a zone change, I mean, it's in the application binder from the applicant, we clearly have an application for a conditional use and a zone change. If it was only noticed as a zone change, can we rule on a zone change and a conditional use in this public hearing? Is this the preliminary or is this the final?
This is the preliminary.
This is a preliminary. So yes, we can go ahead and vote on a zone change and a conditional use tonight? Yes. Thank you.
That was a good question,
Please proceed.
because I would have wanted to know what would happen if the cafe turned into an insurance office. Would we lose our commercial usage or grandfathering, and if it changed use? So I think
I'd rather not do it as a grandfathering.
I'd rather
It kind
do
of
it-
seems too broad of a term, and I think we try not to say stuff is grandfathered in one way or another. If we're going for an approval, I'd rather see a zone change and a conditional use.
I agree. That's what I agree. In
Okay.
case the usage changes, it doesn't lose its grandfathering.
Thank you. Proceed.
All right. Some of the other information that I've collected since the application went in, I'll just go through some of these one at a time because I know you'll have questions about these, so I'll head it off at the pass. First is a letter from the Acequia Association, Acequia Madre del Pueblo. I'm going to read this quickly. It's a short letter from the president, Charles Chacon, of the Acequia Group. And we asked him to review all of the situation. We know how delicate the Acequia system is, and I know that the town of Taos is looking to recorrect some of its bad ways in the past and get the Acequias running again. Unfortunately, this letter was written to Rudy Perea. I apologize for that. For some reason, he thought that was the person who this letter should go to. Dated November 3rd, 2013. Per your request, the property located at the address listed above was physically reviewed by Charles Chacon, Nick Romero, and Jim Schlarbaum. Per our examination of the aforementioned property, the following was determined. An 18-inch culvert is to be installed on the front Acequia immediately facing Paseo del Pueblo Norte. That's where the driveway crosses the Acequia. We have no objection to that. The Acequia on the rear of the property is not to be moved. That's correct. No building should be closer than 10 feet to the Acequia. The Acequia on the rear of the property should be built up to prevent flooding on the property. Per Mark Yarovitz, the applicant will install a head gate on the La Loma lateral, which will provide water to the members' laterals. This will benefit all the members that this Acequia services. When construction is started, please notify the commissioners and/or the mayor domo. This will ensure that the proper flow will occur and correspond to the annual cleaning of the Acequia. Just as a side note, I've asked as many people as I could about the situation, and No one ever remembers seeing water flow in the system in the last many, many years, although Mr. Chacon says they do run water through it once a year to keep it active. And Mr. Tarleton, the owner of the property, is a farmer in his own right and understands the value of acequias, so we concur with this letter. I want to introduce this, and I'll get a copy of this to Ms. Perkins. The second request on the application was for a certificate of appropriateness. At the previous Historic Preservation Commission meeting, we did obtain a certificate of appropriateness. That was case number 213-3 on September 18th, 2013. So as a condition of our approval, we needed this certificate, and we have that on record. Third item, I'm reading these at random. The third one is a question that you're going to raise about a traffic study. Our engineer did a site threshold analysis, an STH, and by his recommendation, because it's only 18 units, we did a traffic count. Existing traffic is grandfathered, however, including the existing turn movements plus the proposed new additional turn movements still results in less than 25 trips at peak hour. Therefore, no STA or TIA is required per our civil engineer. And I will introduce this as an application also. We do need a permit from the Department of Transportation when we cut the street to tie in with the sewer and water. That still is part of the permitting process.
Chair Patterson, I like to keep the rezoning separate from what he's planning to do for site development. We do not want to be contract zoning. So the way I'd rather handle this, and this is my recommendation in the staff report, is that he get a certificate of appropriateness from the Historic Preservation Commission and then come back here for a site plan, commercial site plan review, where these specific items regarding on how he wants to develop the property will be addressed. I think it's important that we separate the rezoning from a project. So some of these...
These are required in the application, though.
Yes, I know, but I wanted you to apply for a site plan approval where this would be relevant for your planned development.
Is that a normal procedure? I'm not sure I know, but a site plan approval goes before planning and zoning? It's not a staff level for CID and all of that?
You know what, it says in the code, and it's not as clear as it might be, that there needs to be site plan review with a rezone. But we don't want to be contract zoning. So I would prefer that
For our information, what's contract zoning?
Chairman, if I might, contract zoning is forbidden, and it's premising any rezoning on a specific project, as we're talking about here. So the rezoning needs to be appropriate, period, and then the site plan for the project is secondary to that. So the case law is really explicit that zoning by contract for a specific use is inappropriate and subject to challenge.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, that's what our LUDC requires. An incredibly detailed site plan in the rezoning process.
We have noted that, and they're part of the changes that are in process. You're seeing some of them tonight, and you'll be seeing many more of them down the road. It is the first land use code I've ever seen that does mandate a violation of the law in order to comply with it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for that correction, because it requires a lot of work on the applicant's part to provide information that may be useless later if the zoning's not approved. So separating them, I approve. So that means you come back for a public hearing, though, for a site plan approval?
Well, the code leaves that as an option right now. I don't know what we're going to do with it ultimately. The issue of site plan review by this commission is under discussion internally. My experience has been that site plans are generally approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission, but that's a decision the Planning and Zoning Commission will make when we put that in front of them.
And as code administrator, given the input that we've had on this project, I would feel more comfortable bumping this up to the Planning and Zoning Commission for the site plan review.
Is that a 2-month process?
We're also looking at a code change tonight to make that not a 2-month process, but, where it will go in front of the Planning and Zoning Commission once.
We don't mind participating in this experiment, that's fine.
There's a lot of moving parts.
Yes.
That
Mr.
makes-
Chairman,
Commissioner Lukes.
Ms. Perkins, I've been on the planning commission for a long time. There is never in my experience have I seen rezoning request requiring a site plan, because there are a lot of applicants that just merely want rezone their property without, maybe for the purpose of selling it in the future for that specific use. I see it as really inappropriate to be asking applicant to come up with before the planning and zoning with the site plan. I think the rezoning request should stand on its own merit.
Right, no,
She's
that's
agreeing.
exactly what I'm saying, that the rezoning should be separate
And I don't think
from a site plan. It doesn't mean that an applicant can come and rezone
And
a
why-
piece of land. That's not a problem.
Okay, and why site plan, wouldn't that be strictly staff function? Why does that come before planning and zoning?
Because our LUDC requires it.
Right now, they're combining the two, and that's awkward. That's,
That makes
doesn't work.
absolutely no sense
The
to me.
reason,
Right.
sure, but that's the reason why it's here tonight, is
Okay.
because the applicant feels that they're meeting the conditions that are stated in the LUDC for a zone change.
Yeah, even though they're kind of,
Sure.
and I would
Depending
like
on
to
the-
separate them so that we're not doing the contract zoning. So we have a
That I
rezoning separate
understand.
from the site plan issues.
And I applaud that move, too. That makes a lot more sense than requiring me to provide civil engineering on a zone change when we don't know if the zoning is going to be approved or not. That's a lot of extra work for unknown.
Exactly.
okay, so we'll clean up the code.
So
I'm going to
we
answer
have,
this.
so, what's that? I'd like the applicant to finish their presentation. We're gonna make two decisions tonight, whether to approve or deny a zone change and whether to approve or deny a conditional use. So, I would say, keep the presentation limited to those two items.
I will try. There are some things in here that I don't know which side of the line they fall on. I'm just going to provide the information, because these are questions I get all the time, regardless of the situation, the acequia, the traffic study. I have an email from all right, so there's 3 properties surrounding this. The street is the fourth. I've spoken to the gentleman that owns the post office on numerous occasions, because I had to send him 3 different certified letters, and he keeps wanting to know why I keep sending him letters. I explained the process. He concurred that it was a great project, no issues. The El Pueblo Hotel on the other side had no issues. And I do have an email from the landowner immediately to the west of the property. Mr. Fred Winter sent me an email, which I will include, that says, "I'm writing on behalf of Marcia and myself to express our support for your plans to construct apartments on your property that abuts the northeast boundary of our residence. We believe that you have a well-conceived plan for adding to the housing stock of the community in a manner that is consistent and respectful to the historic district. We look forward to seeing your plans coming into reality." That was it. Just want to let you know there is no immediate neighbors that have any issues with this. The question at the previous meeting also that we had was about tying into a sewer line on Theodora that was falling apart. We are hooking into the street with the sewer and water. We're not using Theodora. I just wanted to address that in advance. And I guess because of the limit of the project without the site plan information, I have no more information. I'd be happy to answer questions.
Any questions for the applicant? Thank you. Is there anybody signed up to speak on this case before the Planning and Zoning Commission? Anybody in the public wish to speak? If none, thank you. With that, I think we can close the public hearing and ask if there's any discussion for the commission.
I'd like to just say that I'm supportive of any sound projects taking place in Taos, especially at this economically dire times. Not only that projects like these will provide new housing downtown Taos, they'll live up to the infill goals of town of Taos, and also provide jobs for Taoseños. So if the applicant complies with all that's required, then I'm in full support of it.
Thank you. Ms. Perkins, can you remind us what in the C2 zone, does the C2 zone not allow residential development?
The C2 zone allows residential development, I believe, by a conditional use permit. I can look this up.
It allows one residence in the C2 zone. The second or more requires a conditional use. And then, as you noted, Commissioner Patterson, that a multifamily in the C2 zone requires a planned unit development, which in itself is a zone change, and that would have occurred on 40 feet of the property.
So I think, my impression is that when you look at it from a zoning standpoint, all the property along Paseo del Pueblo Norte is in the red, right? So all of it's C2. From a zoning standpoint, I think you would look at a zoning map and think of this as a little bit of an anomaly, as the only property along Paseo del Pueblo Norte that isn't zone C2. With the conditional use, we're basically keeping two properties at the front, the property that are commercial. So I think, we're keeping the intent of the zoning. And that was the gist of my question, is why wouldn't you do it the other way around? Why wouldn't you keep the C2, make the entire property C2, which would be more consistent with the zoning map, where all the property up and down Paseo del Pueblo Norte is zone C2?
Good question. It was a conversation with staff that we went in this direction, because most of the use of the property will be residential rather than commercial, so it was one way or the other. The problem has occurred because of the split zone placed on the property many years ago, long after they owned it.
And what's the total acreage of the property again?
1.51.
1.51? And you're proposing how many units?
18.
And how many units can you do?
21.
So if this is zoned R14, the applicant could basically, at some future date, without coming before the Planning and Zoning Commission, they could basically tear down the commercial buildings and build 3 more apartments if you choose.
Correct. We counted the 2 units at front as 2 units, and 18 and 2 became 20, and said
So you
that's
could build,
the limit.
You could build another 5-unit apartment project in front,
Another what? 5? No.
right? Because you're counting 2
3.
as
3.
3. Okay.
Yeah, but that
Right.
won't happen.
And the other thing that you need to remember is that this is in the historic overlay.
I was gonna
And
say.
so they would have to go before the Historic Preservation Commission to get permission to demolish those structures.
And that will
To
never
demolish
happen.
them? Are you
Yeah,
sure?
the 2 existing historic structures,
They're
Are they
actually
just-
non-contributing.
they're non-contributing.
Uh-huh. I don't think they would have to get a certificate of appropriateness to demolish them. They would have to get a certificate of appropriateness to build something new there.
I thought
I
there
don't
was a
think there's
requirement for
anything- I
demolition.
don't think there's anything stopping. Yes, you would have to get
I-
a certificate of appropriateness. to
No, I
demolish them.
agree, but the Preservation Commission would disagree with you.
Sure.
And that was one of their conditions when they gave him the certificate of appropriateness.
Have you already received a certificate of
Yes, we
appropriateness
did.
for this project?
Yes.
Okay. I only say that just for our information, that's the effect of rezoning the property as R14. We're basically making it R14 residential property. They could choose to keep those commercial units or not. In that neighborhood, it's kind of mixed use. We still have a lot of residences right on the street on Paseo that are used for businesses or not, or used for residences. I wouldn't, I don't have any problem if there were 3 more apartments on the front of that lot. Just pointing it out. And so that's just for conversation. I don't have an opinion if that's a bad thing or a good thing, whether it's an anomaly in the zoning and it's R14 along Paseo. Are there any other questions or issues from the commission? if there are none, we're going to make two motions here. We're going to make one motion for the zone change. So
I'll make a
why
motion,
don't we
Mr.
handle that
Chairman.
one first? Yeah. Commissioner Lukes?
I move to approve case number PZ 2013-18, based on findings of facts and.
For the record, our agenda says 2013-16. That's what
Oh,
we
so is it
revised it to.
16? Okay, sorry. 2016, based on findings of facts and the staff report, to approve the zoning change to R14.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Lay?
Yes.
Commissioner Garcia?
I'll abstain.
Oh, that's right, sorry. Chair Patterson?
Yes.
Commissioner Lukes?
Yeah, for the record, we have also Commissioner Lucero here. Anyway.
I think, Mr. Lucero, if it's okay, since you walked in the middle of the case, would you mind abstaining from this vote?
That's exactly what I was going to do, yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, my vote is yes.
Okay, and then Commissioner Press?
Yes.
Okay, so 4-0, the motion passes for the rezoning from to make the whole
C2 to
parcel
R14.
R14.
Then I'll follow up with another motion to approve case number PZ 2013, what was it, -16?
-16.
Based on the findings of facts in the staff report, to grant applicant conditional use permit.
I have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Lay?
Yes.
Chair Patterson?
Yes.
Commissioner Lukes?
Yes.
Commissioner Press?
Yes.
The motion passes 4-0 for a conditional use permit to allow the commercial uses at the front of the property in the R14 zone.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to make sure that the minutes do document that we did abstain, so even though it's a 4-0.
When we do a roll call vote, I think you should go ahead and call their names
And so they,
say abstained.
That's a good idea, thank you.
So in regards to the site plan, you know, I think they have a certificate of appropriateness, and the conditions of the site plan are clear, and I think those things should be reviewed at the building permit level. I don't feel. Does anybody else here feel different?
That's what where I was going before. That we shouldn't even have to deal with it. It should be at staff level.
Ms. Perkins, do you feel differently?
Yes, I do. The certificate of appropriateness actually has conditions in it for the Planning and Zoning Commission.
And those conditions are.
Do you have a copy?
I do.
Can we pass
For the
pass
planning?
conditions on them?
We'll get even.
Generally, we ask the applicants to go through the Historic Preservation Commission if we think that it may go to you too.
Could those?
We're going to send it back.
Oh.
Yeah. Could those conditions just be applicable to the staff
Can you
instead
let us
of
know
to
what those
us?
conditions are?
Okay, so the conditions. The Planning and Zoning Commission needs to review the site landscaping plans, properly scaled 1 inch to 20 feet, and ensure the preservation of existing healthy trees to the extent practical, enough parking exists, the driveway detail is sufficient for the traffic expected, the drainage and engineering is adequately addressed, and the acequias are preserved, including the installation of an 18-inch culvert for the acequia under the driveway.
I don't think any of those are within the purvey of the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Well, for normal site plan review, there are planning and zoning commissions that do commercial site plan review and do approve them.
Can we do a final site plan? Can we do a site plan review at their final public hearing?
There is no final.
This was a preliminary public hearing.
We have to
No.
go back to you a second time and then to town council for a zone change, so.
For the zone, right.
This is a preliminary public hearing.
Preliminary.
So we've approved this zone change and this conditional use to come back for a final public hearing. When they come back for their final public hearing, can we do the site plan review?
Oh, will the applicant be ready?
What we submitted was a site plan review for today, as per the
I would
code
say the site
requirement.
plan you submitted today isn't ready for a site plan review.
Right, because we haven't finished the grading and drainage, et cetera.
There's nothing on the site plan's labeled, it's not to scale, it's not.
No, we
it
have
doesn't
that,
show.
we have that ready, but that wasn't,
We've We're doing the rezoning before we did
right.
the project.
Let me ask a question about the appropriateness of the conditions put on by the Historic Preservation Commission and whether or not those items were in their purview.
I don't believe they are or they were.
Go through them again and consider whether or not they should be part of the Historic Preservation Review.
I think it's out of
Mr. Chairman, that's not relevant to this. I don't think that this Planning and Zoning Commission passes on the action of the Historic Commission.
I withdraw the question.
So the question is do we do a site plan review for this project? If you feel we should, the next question is, can we do that at the final public hearing?
Again, I hate to mix the zoning with the project.
Mm-hmm. Are we going to make them come back again for another hearing?
Well, we aren't. The code is. I mean, we're not making this stuff up as we go.
Right.
This is in the code.
The
Right
final-
now, the code requires a contract zoning which is indefensible in the court.
Okay.
So until we fix that process, right now, the code provides that there's a site plan review by this commission. So what we've tried to do to make sense out of a code provision that is extremely unwieldy is to separate the two, the rezoning from the right now code mandated site plan review. So I don't know that the commission under the existing code has an option to do a site plan review. It's required. The only change we've made until we can make a permanent change is to try to segregate the two processes so it does not appear as though we premised the rezoning on a specific building.
Okay. So when they come back next month for a final public hearing, can we include a site plan review as a separate item on the agenda?
He can submit a new application for a site plan. He can advertise that separately, and we will have two cases. We'll have the final hearing for this rezoning, and then we will start with a preliminary hearing for the site plan.
And can we approve it in one hearing, so they don't have to come back 30 days later?
Separate approvals, just like we did tonight. There'll be a separate approval for the site
No,
plan
no,
review.
no, I understand that,
Okay.
but, the site plan approval suggests there would be preliminary hearing, which implies that the final hearing on the site plan approval would be 30 days later. I'm asking if we can grant the final approval at the next meeting.
No, you can't. Not until we have a code change.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
in favor of
So,
streamlining.
so their site
I
plan,
understand.
their site plan review is going to have a preliminary and a final public hearing?
Commissioner
Right,
Patterson?
and we are trying to address that with another code change
Okay.
to make this so it's not so arduous for the applicant. But at this point in time, the rezoning is approved by you with a preliminary and a final hearing. Then this goes to the to the council.
Understood.
The council has to approve a rezoning as well.
Understood.
So I think if you look at the timing, by the applicant staggering their applications, we're really not delaying them
Okay.
by all that much.
Okay. Commissioner Perez.
No, I was just going to say that these are two separate projects. The project is one thing, and the rezoning is another, and we're trying to jam them all together. Try and get them from coming back so many times, but that's the process.
Okay. Understood. Anybody else? Okay, we're done. Thank you. Thank you. We'll move on to agenda item 8C, P&Z case 2013-21. Since this doesn't involve an applicant, I think we'll just move on to a presentation from staff.
Okay, so this is one of the code changes that we were discussing earlier. What we're trying to do is amend the existing Land Use Development Code, Chapter 16. There are several sections that apply, the application procedure, the approval entities, as well as the noticing requirements. So what we are trying to do is we are trying to use the preliminary hearing as as the Development Review Committee, which is the internal staff, and that currently is a public meeting right now. But what we're trying to do is make that be a public hearing to take the place of the preliminary hearing before the Planning and Zoning Commission or before the Historic Preservation Commission. And then the second hearing would then be the Planning and Zoning Commission hearing or the Historic Preservation Commission hearing. And then if it needs to, it will go then to council. So that's one method that we're trying to do as far as streamlining. If a commission hears a case and they feel like they don't have adequate information to make a decision, then they can always ask the applicant to come back for a second hearing. The other major change that we're asking for is the noticing requirements. We've understood that it's a hardship for many of these applicants, particularly in a high-density area, to be sending certified letters to the property owners within 300 feet. So we are taking out the requirement that they be certified letters, with the exception of the rezoning. The state statute says with a rezoning, you need to notify the adjacent property owners within 100 feet through certified notice. So this is our attempt to address many of the issues that you just brought up with the last case. The staff report outlines the changes, the proposed changes, and I'd like to have the staff report become part of the record. Thank you.
Questions from the commission?
So how are you going to have the applicants verify that they've actually notified people within that period, that amount of space, 300 feet around the residence or property? How would you verify that?
We can, the town can provide and we actually do this already. We provide the address labels or the property owners within 300 feet, we give them their addresses. And so they can send notices through regular mail. If the mail comes back, then they know that they didn't have the right address, and they can find out who is at that property now, or they can go over and talk to them. Somehow they just need to verify that everybody around them knows what they're requesting. They also have, the notice requirement, still the legal ad, 15 days in advance. And they can post their property as well, saying that they're asking for, whatever they're asking for, a conditional use permit, a rezoning, whatever. The way the code reads right now, there's 3 ways of noticing the neighbors, and 2 are required.
The standard, Commissioner, would be an affidavit that was signed by the applicant that they'd made those mailings.
That's the question, Mr. Chairman, that's the question I had, because we want to make sure there's transparency and we are notifying the surrounding neighbors. So, yeah, an affidavit, it puts the burden on that particular person. Yeah.
And the Code Act, the change actually is a little farther than that. It provides for an affidavit, and it also does exactly what the Commissioner just said, shifts the burden to the applicant to establish at their peril. If they choose not to use the registered mail, they use the affidavit process, and the burden of proof is on them if they're challenged. So you can save some money, but you assume some risk.
Okay. I have a question when we're reading these ordinances. When we're reading through this ordinance, how do we know what's been added or changed? Is what we're seeing an ordinance that's been revised to what we're supposed to be passing tonight?
There are some changes.
You did not get this attached or section 16.12.040.5 application procedure, and then on that page start to see underlines and
Okay.
redlining.
So does that mean that every paragraph that has a line next to it has been amended?
Yes, and unfortunately we don't have a color copier, so it makes it a little harder to read. So you'll see cross-outs and you'll see underlining for the additions.
So the underlined language has been added?
Yeah, so if text is underlined, it's been added. If it's crossed out,
Okay.
it's proposed to be deleted.
Thank you.
I move that the town of Taos buys a color copier. $200 or less. No seconds. Didn't get a second.
Did you make a motion?
I think this is a good change. I've looked at the public meeting notices and the meeting minutes of the DRC meeting. They're being noted as a public hearing. I think that's good. For a long time, our DRC meetings, we had no response back to the applicants. There was no record of their conversations or the requirements that were placed on them by the DRC meeting. So I like the formality that's being offered in the DRC meeting, and I think that's certainly adequate for a preliminary public hearing. And I think that reduces their time in front of the Planning and Zoning Commission. So I'm all for these changes. I haven't read them in complete detail, but on the surface, it appears like a good change, and it seems like it's been a thorough change to the provision of the code, the application procedure.
Mr.
Is there any
Chairman,
other
we're also
discussion?
trying to eliminate the need for the commission to attach a lot of conditions to the approvals. We're not real good with following through on conditions. We don't have a conditions person. So hopefully the traffic questions, water and sewer questions, those basic questions can be addressed at DRC. And the goal from the attorney's office working with the planning commission and the planning department is to see if we can't get complete procedures past this commission that are basically condition-free. Everything that needs to be addressed will be addressed at this meeting as opposed to hanging out waiting for staff to do.
Thank you.
We hope it works.
Any other comments from commissioners?
One question, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Garcia.
Ordinances, do those go to the town as well for
Yes, sir.
approval? Okay.
If we approve this, if we make a motion and approve this ordinance tonight, it'll proceed to town council for final approval? Is that correct?
We have to go through the process of preliminary hearing, final
Okay.
hearing, in
So
front of
this is a
planning and zoning.
this is a preliminary hearing
Yes, and then
for
it
this
will go to
ordinance.
council.
It'll come back to us as a final.
Yes. And one question as the applicant to you, I am wondering if the DRC time that we are meeting, and I guess that's one thing that is worth asking around as far as what time that meeting should be. Right now, we have it on Thursday mornings at 9 or at 10. It's kind of changed as far as the times. And is morning convenient for the public, or should we be having those meetings later in the day, or does the time matter? This is just a procedural question that I thought I'd ask.
I think you should have them at the convenience of the town staff and the departments that are required to give their input. And I think you're going to have much more thorough input and attendance by them if it's during the workday.
Yes, I agree. I just didn't know morning or afternoon, if it mattered.
I think they're fine the way they are, 9 a.m., 10 a.m. Thursday mornings.
Okay.
I would entertain a motion.
Pavel's got to do the honor.
I'm tired. I move to approve case number 2013-21 for final hearing the next meeting in December, what? December which? 4th.
Our last meeting of 2013. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All in favor, none opposed. Motion passes. I lost my agenda. Agenda item 8D, case number P&Z 2013-22, ordinance number 13-16, an ordinance adding as permitted principal uses to the town of Taos Code Section 1616.140 for the C2 commercial zone to allow certain agricultural uses. Ms. Perkins.
This is a request by the Planning and Zoning Commission, I believe at the last meeting, was that we take a draft of an ordinance, and it also looks like it's a little more than that. It was a resolution as well for your consideration as far as allowing agricultural uses to be permitted by right in C1, which is neighborhood commercial, and C2, which is general commercial. I made a few changes to it, nothing of substance other than, one of the things that's allowed, permitted principal uses is veterinary establishments are allowed provided that all the animals are kept inside the buildings or meet the limited agricultural land use requirements. And I use limited agricultural land use requirements because that's how the ordinance was drafted. I don't know if that's confusing. But I think if you have agricultural uses, then you shouldn't limit the veterinary establishments to being indoors. That was just a comment. And then staff submitted their staff report. Staff is a little uncomfortable allowing agricultural uses by right. We would actually like to consider the use of an annual license to allow those uses, just because we don't have a lot of, we haven't tried this before. I believe the town attorney has and has run into some issues with it. I guess I would prefer to have some more public input on this matter. I, as the code administrator, don't feel comfortable, weighing in one way or the other. And so this is a preliminary hearing, and I'd love to hear the public's comments on this. So I'd like to have my staff report be part of the record, and I stand for questions.
Have people from the public to speak on it.
So, Mr. Chairman, maybe?
Commissioner Lukes.
So, an applicant would come to you and ask for a license to use his commercial or her commercial land for agricultural use, and it would be over-the-counter process, pay a fee, and move on. And it would be good for 12 months. How do you foresee that process?
I think that we need to have some sort of notification to the adjacent property owners to make sure that they're okay with it. This is open. I mean, this is a code change that the Planning and Zoning Commission can weigh in heavily. I have not thought about it a lot. I think by allowing it to be annual, if there are problems that arise, then we have an easier time addressing them. If you do this by conditional use, the use runs with the land. So as long as that use is, there's no break in the use, it's running with the land. If you're allowing it by right, then there's a lot more issues, I would think. Right now, a lot of the current agricultural uses have been grandfathered in. I don't know. It's up to you.
Oh, okay. Because
I mean, I would love to have some guidance on this.
I would look to make it as not onerous on the applicant as possible, and notifying the maybe if they bring a letter of consent from the neighbors, that should suffice for the staff. But make it easy on the applicants.
Okay.
This was the one that I was most confused on. I see the staff report. Is there an actual ordinance drafted along with this that actually shows the language it's supposed to be amended to? Am I missing?
It's right here.
What's the ordinance is the second piece? Let me see. Okay. Any other commissioners have questions for staff?
I guess I had a similar question to Commissioner Lukes about it, but maybe I'll redirect it to Mr. James. He said it was mentioned that he had some experience with some problems in the past. So Could you explore some of that with us so we have an idea of what you're going with?
Yeah, well, the classic one is actually a turkey farm in Livonia, Michigan. But it's a turkey farm smack dab in the middle of maybe 20,000 houses. It's a spectacularly unpopular use. City of Royal Oak, Michigan, we ran into substantial issues. A lot of people like chickens more than others. A lot of people like cattle more than others. So the problem for the town attorney's office is, number one, we have other zones where this type of use is allowed that require much larger spaces. So I'd have to try and figure out why in one agricultural zone you need 20 acres to do this, and in a commercial zone you need 4 or 5. I don't remember what the proposal was. And as a permitted use, or as any use running with the land, conditional, special, whatever you want to call it, if this becomes a problem, it becomes very, very difficult to abate it. Almost impossible. And I don't know that I haven't had time, but I can tell you for certain that if this is going to move forward, I'm going to have to do an in-depth review of the other agricultural zones to try and figure out whether or not it can be legally explained how a C2 is turned into an agricultural use without obviating some of the rest of the code. The enforcement issues are overwhelming, where someone starts as a farmer and then the next user decides they want to graze cattle. You're talking about commercial zones, generally next to major streets, generally next to other uses, restaurants, those sorts of things that are probably not conducive to animals that defecate. So the enforcement issue is the other one. So overall, there's creating conflicts within our existing zones. That's a technical issue. And then my experience has been that enforcing animals in commercial zones is very problematic. Now, if you want to eliminate the animals, then the only other issue that I would have would be we have water issues in town. We have the abated water rights settlement. I don't know that we're supposed to be trying to increase the amount of irrigated land in the town of Taos, at least within the spirit of abated. So it's not as simple as it may seem. I would like to think that we could put some standards together for a licensing process that would be extremely quick. I can live with almost anything for a year. The bigger problem is when these become uses of right that run with land.
Thank you.
Chairman, I have a question.
Commissioner Lukes.
On the second page, at the bottom, paragraph 3C, limited to chickens and turkeys, no roosters shall be permitted. Isn't that discrimination? It's based on sex? I like roosters.
Well, and you know what, my sister has chickens, and she finds that even though she tries not to get a rooster, she always ends up with one.
Yeah, I think roosters are cool.
Yes.
Need to strike that out.
Roosters make noise.
I like to hear them.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Commissioner Garcia.
I know you made some comments in reference to you want a lot of direction from the planning and zoning. But I really would like to get, and I heard from the attorney about if certain things were striked or taken off, it might be a little easier to control and so forth. But I would like to see from the staff some type of their recommendation they would like to see, instead of just placing it on the commission to say, I know it was brought from the commission that they would want the opportunity for agricultural uses in commercial zoning, but I would like to, I mean, if you don't like it, your staff needs to share that these are the issues why I have some issues with it, but I would like to hear from the staff. I mean, basically in here you indicated annual license or by special use permit, but you don't say which the staff prefers. And so I would like to know that. I think there was a great point brought up about the animals piece of it, and I think that I agree that's probably one of the bigger issues that neighbors might have as an issue than the other type of farming. So, I'm just bringing, I know this is just a preliminary presentation, but I think it needs to, I just need to share that, that I would like to hear a little bit more from staff, firmly of what they see or the issues and how the process they would like to see.
Okay. Yes, I didn't quite know how to handle this because a couple of the commissioners had written some language. And I do say, as far as staff recommendation, that staff proposes the issuance of an annual license. And staff will consider a conditional use permit, and then staff does not recommend as agricultural uses as a principal use. But we can come up with some language. I was also working on a use index, taking every single zone in here, and I didn't finish. But what I was doing was putting together a chart showing which uses are allowed by right in each zone, which uses are allowed by conditional use in each zone, which are accessory uses, so that we can kind of look at each zone and see what's allowed. What complicates it is what the town attorney was alluding to, whereas here we have a minimum, we're proposing a minimum of 5 acres, whereas another agricultural zone wants a higher acreage. And so, but I think by doing that use index, we can start to see how these zones are working and how they complement or don't complement each other, so that we can. The problem is that now I'm opening the door up to all the zones, but we have a lot of zones, and I think some of them aren't really working for the town of Taos as well as they might. And this agricultural use is kind of highlighting that. I don't know what you think about that, but that was another approach that I was thinking that might help us get our hands around this. Again, I would like more public input on it too.
Ms. Perkins, if you have that chart, I would love to have a copy of it. I think that would be really very useful to all of us, where we would see, at a glance, we would see all the uses, how they complement or not complement each other. The other thing is I wanted to ask maybe Mr. James, are there any communities that we can model after that have something in place like this that we can plagiarize and cut and paste and extract the best of the best? So we get some direction, because it seems like we're starting from starting line. And
well, this relative to a license, that's real easy. Relative to farming in commercial districts, that's a pretty rare animal, so to speak. I don't know. I have seen some. I have seen some from Colorado. I'm not familiar with any in New Mexico. So I would have to do some research relative to the ones that I have seen are transitional between commercial and agricultural, and I've not seen any in New Mexico. I haven't done a completely thorough search. So if you want to do this as a matter of right, then it's going to take, we'll add that to the research pile. If the commission is more inclined to do it as a license, I mean, that's easy. We can do that in a week.
I have a comment. I'm familiar with the town and the zones and whatnot, and I really don't understand why we're even going to looking at this. I know I'm coming into the commission late. I don't know what the others are thinking about this, but it doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me to try to have agricultural in the commercial zone. That just doesn't make any sense to me. So I don't support it.
This might be a good time. Is there anybody from the public that would wish to speak? Please approach. We are treating this as a public hearing. Could you please state your name for the record?
Okay, so is this a preliminary public hearing?
It is.
Public hearing. I guess this would be a preliminary public hearing. That's the first one.
Okay, my name is Micah Roseberry. I'm here representing myself as a member of the Taos Farmers Market, a member of Cerro Vista Farm, a member of Farmhouse Cafe, and a member of Taos Village Farms.
Ms. Perkins, it's a public hearing. Do we need to swear people in?
Yeah, I was thinking we did. Do you swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth?
I promise to tell the truth.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I swear. I actually like to swear.
Yeah.
Let's see, I think that I maybe spoke in front of this commission, I think it was maybe 4 months ago.
Yeah.
I believe it was in July. It could be in August. I don't know if we have a record of that. I guess it's with a lot of temperance right now that I stand here. I've lived here 25 years, and I know a lot of people who've lived here a lot longer than I have. I understand the agricultural integrity of this area, including the town of Taos. The town of Taos isn't really completely separate in its uses through all the zoning. I guess I want to say that I've seen a lot of changes, and I've seen a lot of things develop here, and I feel like that we're really talking about something that is someone's right. And to issue a license for a year to a farmer who has to buy a tractor, a rototiller, equipment, grow seeds, like I don't know how many people in this room have ever grown maize or calabazas or frijoles or have any ancestors who actually lived here, and that's the reason we're actually still here and we still have acequias and we still have this land, because all these seeds they have a history here. And I believe that it's really all of our responsibility, including the planning and zoning and the town of Taos, to preserve that. And it doesn't just stop at the border of the town of Taos. And I guess that I was under the impression that maybe there was an understanding of the need of a particular farm, which I've been a part of for 2 years, and it's actually been a farm for, I think, maybe 4 years. It's an education project with the Taos Academy. It's adjacent to the Taos Academy, adjacent to the land that the Rocky Mountain Youth Corps is developing, also planning to have an agriculture project, which is adjacent to the Juan Gonzalez agriculture land and building, whatever that's really called. And I've already actually, we've been selling produce at the farmer's market. We've been selling produce to my cafe and bakery. We have been supplying produce to the shared table. I guess it's an illegal use. But I really feel like that we have to stand here and really take a look at our future. And I didn't really expect to bring up this conversation tonight, but I did remember bringing, and I don't know if you still have the packet, I didn't bring it again, a presentation that was actually from, I think I mentioned that I was looking for other communities that actually were moving in this direction, other examples. I started looking in the Northwest and Oregon and Washington and other more progressive states, and I actually found a lot in Albuquerque. And I would be happy to make that presentation again, get you some more information, do that research, because I think that Taos can actually really be on the cutting edge. And we're actually talking about doing an agriculture project. There is an agriculture project at Parr Field that included 500 elementary students. In the spring, they each planted a seed, and that grew into an amazing traditional farming project. And with Miguel Santisteban and other community members. And this fall, we harvested that with 500 children, each one, including the teachers. There were teachers who'd never picked a piece of corn. I don't know if you're familiar with this project. You probably have seen it as, the cornfield there in the soccer field at Enos Garcia. And the amazing education opportunity for those children and the connection that they made with their parents and with their grandparents through that project is something that we need to support. I know that there's a plan to continue that project, and that corn was made into Chicos at the Chrysalis School, which I think is also maybe in the town of Taos? No. Okay, well, anyway, I maybe am belingering my point, but I just feel like that there is a lot of education that needs to happen. I feel like we do need to have a full-fledged public hearing. I intend to return here with the farming community And I really believe that, you know, it can be an asset to Taos. You know, like right now, I'm actually in the county with my business, but I have an amazing garden, a half-an-acre garden that was within the site of the highway this summer. I don't know if any of you saw it or not. It was a cornfield, there was quinoa, there were sunflowers, there were traditional plantings, there was pumpkins. It was amazing. There was so much outpouring of support from the community and people who loved seeing it. It wasn't something that was like an eyesore or something that was inappropriate. And I know El Prado isn't the same as the town of Taos, but I feel that, you know, we just need to really look at what are we pursuing here. I don't think anyone's trying to make like a huge commercial pig farm or a feedlot, you know. And so anyway, I would, I guess, ask the zoning commission to call a public hearing. And I think that there was talk of having a committee work on the wording, and I feel like that maybe we really need to get serious about it. And I do want to say initially I actually thought that we might be getting close to approving something, and I wanted to bring up, you know, the attributes of the farming and also the fact that it's been so many months waiting for some sort of situation that we can actually have this agriculture project. We have different schools involved. We have community members. We have a lot of support. And if I thought I'd be standing up here this many months later after the harvest, you know, the winter rye planted, and, you know, one of the people that I work with on this project is actually, quite frankly, terminally ill. And the dream of this project has been to be a jewel, you know, for Taos, to really be something that we can look to for our sustainability and also for our education of our youth. And I'll be happy to bring the statistics about our youth before you as well. But I guess I believe that all of you, I guess you're appointed. Is that correct?
Yes.
You know, that there's a bigger responsibility here that is, maybe it's a moral responsibility that you might have to see how this really connects further than just the land. The land use goes further, I think, than just what you might see on the piece of land. It connects to the history, it connects to the future, and I just would like to, I don't know, ask everybody to take a breath and maybe, you know, see what we can do about this. This could be a point where the community can come together and where we can really work towards something. And I think some sort of license that you apply for annually is a ridiculous thing for an agriculture project and for the history of our community here. And I think I could probably fill this room with a lot of people who are my elders that would probably agree with me. So anyway, I thank you for your consideration, and I'd be happy to prepare another packet. I don't know if anybody still has their packet from 4 months ago, but I think that there's a lot of communities that are really progressive in this point and having a lot of positive experiences, and that we can bring that forward and bring this to a resolution. And I would just ask that we could do it in some sort of expediency.
Thank you. Commissioner Lucero, so, 4 months ago we did put this on the agenda as an item. We probably had 20, 25 people in the audience that spoke in favor of this and kind of asked that it be moved forward. I think, whether or not the language of this ordinance is perfect, I think it can be amended as we go. I'd like to see us not spin our wheels at this level for eternity until we
Chairman,
come up
I just have,
with the right thing.
on what we have before us,
Commissioner Perez.
it sounds like we're trying to, they're trying to put livestock in a commercial zone. And with this.
If we look at the property that's zoned commercial in Taos, I don't know how many parcels are over 5 acres, but I doubt there's more than a couple. So what the provision of that does is it actually limits livestock to almost none.
Right. But, she's not talking about anything about livestock. She's talking about, like back here in Parr Field,
I agree.
just growing some plants.
So we could delete the language about livestock altogether.
I can talk about livestock.
Let us have our.
I'm more willing to lean towards gardening, than having livestock in, you know, in a commercial zone.
Okay.
Mr.
That's
Chairman,
my opinion.
Commissioner Lukes.
I'd like to comment also on Commissioner Lucero's opinion and statement. Just to give him a little background, where all of this started and originated was with applicant who is trying to use his commercial land for growing vegetable and produce. And really, when you look at a lot of commercial land around town, it's nothing but sage, garbage, and whatnot. And you know, to honor the culture of this town, which I'm sure you more than any of us probably appreciate, to leave lands lie fallow is injustice. I think anybody who wants to turn lands into producing good food, healthy food for the community, commands our support, and that's where we were coming from. It's not that we want to see, you know, cow and pig pens around the highway. No, but to give the people that own commercial land, where there is no imminent development coming because of the economy and whatnot, what else to do with it other than, you know, just let weeds grow and collect garbage? I think I'd love to see a cornfield next to Walmart.
Well, that wasn't really my concern. My concern was the livestock, chicken, cows, roosters, whatever, in commercial zones that are close to residential areas, and that's what creates some issues for the town, I believe. I'm not opposed to farming, you know, growing corn or whatever, things such as that. I think I'm going to have to be convinced otherwise from what my opinion is at this point before I would even consider that.
Yeah, and I have no problem with just limiting it to growing and leave the animals completely out. But if you can give the lady a chance to speak, I would like to hear what she's got to say.
So
Are there-
technically,
Commissioner Perez.
technically, the garden they have here at Parfield is completely against code.
Well, sure.
We have to go arrest those school children.
Yeah. Hang them up.
Any other questions or issues from commissioners? Would you like to respond to the livestock and fowl question? And my question to you would be, you know, if we drafted some language for an ordinance that allowed agricultural uses in commercial zones, that didn't include livestock or fowl, would that be? Would you support that?
No, I wouldn't. I want to have a chance to speak to it because I did use as an example two, you know, gardens that I participated in, and we are actually talking about having, you know, the opportunity for those students to have experience with animals. And one of the things that I think, just as an idea, I think, you know, like I've driven through Amarillo where there's like feedlots, right, and it's terrible. But like what you could see here would be, what about a small herd of sheep that were used for, you know, textile, right? Like, because that's like a tradition, like there's 4-H, there's like education opportunities. That's one thing we've talked about developing on that land, is, in which I think that here it was like 2 animals per, well, I don't have, I'm sorry, I just got a copy of this, but it was not a heavily numbered use of animals, right? What was it, 2 per acre? 2 per acre.
2 per acre
But-
with a minimum of 5 acres to have any.
Yeah, but in other words, you know, like I've been looking at doing some planning with Patricia Quintana, with the traditional churro sheep, with possibly, you know, a few artisan dairy animals. Like there's things here that could be developed that wouldn't be like a feedlot, that would be a tradition, continuing the tradition of weaving, of dyeing and dyeing the wool, not dyeing, but anyway, I think there's a lot of other pictures that aren't just like a feedlot with, you know, sort of cow to cow or the turkey farm. that would be, that it makes like a whole process, like the farming, like the manure from the animals goes into the ground. It's a whole life cycle, education part, and I don't know if, have any of you been down actually to that Taos Village Farm area?
I think what we're kind of up against is I think a lot of the situations that you're describing would be would be a specialized use that might be specific to a single property, and somebody can apply to do that. I think the difficulty we're going to have selling this as a right, because when we define it this way, it becomes a right that everybody can do automatically.
If you
So
have
it's not-
5 acres.
So it's not a special condition. I think when you talk about special uses like educational programs or or a one-time thing, I think that's something different. And I think if we want to see this go forward, we're probably going to have to find some kind of compromise in between. So and we have to be, and I think we have to separate what you have as a right to do on your land versus what's a special use. And I think animals are probably going to be the defining line between those two things. So I think if people want to have farm or agricultural animals on a lot, I think we're probably going to have to give that up or not get anything. So I think you have a lot of support for farming and agriculture in a commercial zone, and I think where this is either going to hit the road or not hit the road is whether we keep that in there as a right.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
I think that...
So I think we have to think about that. Just to let you know. So this is a public hearing. Was this noticed as a public hearing?
Yes, it was. As the
Okay.
town, we're limited somewhat. We did the 15-day legal
Okay.
ad.
So
Wait, we did do the 15-day? But
Yeah.
it was just last Wednesday that was rescheduled.
We posted it.
This was on the agenda for last Wednesday, so it was
Right.
posted previously to that. So just for your knowledge, this is a preliminary public hearing. It'll come back before us as a final public hearing. If we pass it at that final public hearing, it'll go before town council. So if we choose to move this on in its form, if nothing else, it'll spark the discussion in front of town council, and that's the best place for probably to bring out support. I think let's see what happens tonight. If we choose to approve this tonight, we'll hear it again next month at our regular meeting in December. If that would be a good time to bring some more support and some more people to talk about it. And if we move it on to town council after that, that would be even better time to bring more support and talk about it.
Okay, so I just need some clarification, because the other thing about animals and about land is that if you leave land fallow, there's all kinds of noxious weeds that grow. If you have limited and controlled grazing, then it's really good for the land, and that would be why you would really want to promote that as well as the other things I've mentioned. So I'm not certain if we're now talking about passing this but without the animal provision, or you're talking about just putting it up for a vote right now.
We're discussing.
I mean, what were you
Both of those.
proposing? I wasn't sure.
Right now the language is in here, and that includes the language you have about 2-hoofed animals per acre, minimum of 5 acres to have those.
Okay, so,
Yeah.
and we said there was maybe, do we know how many parcels of over 5 acres there are in Taos that are commercially zoned?
I'm guessing there aren't that many,
Like 2 or 3?
just from my knowledge.
I think there's 2 or 3.
Yeah.
So I guess I would just, in my closing argument, I would just say that I think that we're really looking at a small density for animals, and that those acres, those few commercial pieces are probably not really going to present the problems that we could imagine.
I
And-
agree with you, and we helped draft this language, and we did it
Okay.
for that reason.
Okay, well, so I just wanted to say that, because I think that the language and the limitation then really...
Pretty limited.
It's limited,
Yep.
right. Okay, thank you.
So Chairman,
Commissioner Lukes.
we can also limit it to certain animals only, so people are not worried about pig pens or some nauseous activities.
The language that we have in there is pretty limiting, as is. Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. So we can, I think we can take action on this tonight. We can approve it to move on to a public hearing. We can deny it to move on to a public hearing. We can continue it as a preliminary public hearing. We can propose that this language is amended in one shape or form. It's up to the commission.
I'd like to make a motion that we move case number PZ 2013-22 Is that the correct one? Yeah, to final public hearing as is.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Lay,
Yes.
Commissioner Garcia,
To the final meeting, yeah, yes,
This moves it to a final public hearing. It'll come back in December.
yes.
At that time, we can choose to forward it to town council,
Or make,
or deny it, or amend it.
or amend it, right?
Yes, sir.
Chair Patterson,
Yes.
Commissioner Lukes,
Yes.
Commissioner Press,
No.
Commissioner Lucero. Okay, the vote is 4-0.
4-2.
2.
4-2, sorry. I wrote 2 down and then I say 0. To move this to a final public hearing for December 4th.
Thank you. This will move on to a final public hearing on December, was it December 4th or December 6th?
Do I have the wrong date? Whatever is the Wednesday of the first.
Okay, first Wednesday in December. This will be back as a final public hearing before this commission. If you'd like to bring more people in to speak on this, that would be a good time to do it. Thank you.
December 4th.
December 4th, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, before I move on from this item, the town attorney's office did send a email on this issue on September 5th regarding gardening in C2. I'll resend that. The other thing I would ask the commissioner and anyone that wants to support this ordinance to try and understand, because the commission says 5 acres, that needs to be defensible somehow. We have other provisions in our ordinance that say you need 20 acres in order to have farm animals. So because the commission decides that 5 acres is the right number, if that turns out in a later litigation to be viewed as arbitrary and capricious, what's the difference between 6, 4, 3, 2, 7? I mean, it needs to be defensible, and there has to be some fact-finding to establish that. And the same thing is true on the issue of animals. It's very difficult when you're in a courtroom to explain to a judge why sheep are okay and cows aren't, why alpaca are okay and llamas aren't, why bees are okay and other things are not. So, I mean, you just, because you can create it in your mind does not mean that it's necessarily defensible in the court. There has to be some rational basis for it, and it also has to be rational when placed against the other provisions that are already exist in the ordinance. So you can't take to the bank that a 5-acre minimum is going to be defensible any more than you can take to the bank that you can preclude pigs but allow sheep. There's another element to this beyond just the aesthetics of it.
Chairman. What about roosters?
Chairman, if I may.
Well, roosters do not enjoy constitutional protections,
Commissioner Lee.
at least at this point.
Mr.
But
James,
capricious and arbitrary.
Mr. James, the question would be, would it be a defense that there's very few pieces of land that are over 5 acres? And would it be appropriate then to make a list of the total number of properties in Taos that actually would even fit into that category as a defense as to why the logic applies?
Mr. James, if I may, I appreciate your input, and I think what you're doing is actually making, if we do choose to proceed and pass an ordinance, you're helping us make one that's defensible and one that's well thought out. I think on all the issues that Mr. James brings up, what in my mind, what I see that start to make is maybe it's a staff report that builds over time that includes some thought and some assessment on each one of those issues, and that becomes backup to passing the ordinance. Is that am I heading in the right direction with that? Is that what you're imagining?
Yeah, I
as
mean,
well?
I don't care.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not my call. But what is my call is trying to assist the commission in getting something on the books that's defensible. And I'm just saying that it's not 100% guaranteed that because 5 acres is the number we pick, that someone with 4 acres or 3 doesn't come in and say, well, what is the difference? And there has to be some factual basis, and, Commissioner Lee suggests one, there are very few of these. I don't know which way that cuts. It sort of cuts both ways, I guess. But again, I mean, I got nothing against food. Obviously, I eat too much. I got nothing against gardening. I got nothing against farming. My experience is that we need to be very careful about what we draft so that it's consistent with the rest of our code. And when we finish this, people can rely on it, that it's a defensible process. So, yeah, I believe what the chair has suggested is establishing some factual basis for this and some rational basis for it, and looking at it against the rest of the code is an extremely important part of passing a defensible ordinance, and that's all my concern is. I have no position on gardening. I like gardening.
So I think between some of the active members of the public and I think some of the members of this commission who have supported this bill, I think I think we're getting some really good advice, and I think we need to act on that in the meantime between this month and next, and start to produce a defensible record on these issues.
Mr. Chair, if I may, and I invite members of the commission, and especially the ones who oppose this approval, to come up with the language and criteria that would make sense for them, and so we can brainstorm about this so the final product will be worthy.
And just for to assist us in doing that, Mr. James, can you remind us what's appropriate in terms of communication between commissioners on an issue like this between this meeting and the next? How do we propose language and distribute that amongst us for comment or review, or what's appropriate and what's not?
Well, say this is a bad day to ask me that.
Would sending it to Ms. Perkins and let her collect our individual views and then bring them
Certainly that can be done. A work session would be appropriate. Policy decisions need to be made in public. So one-way communication, sending your thoughts to the planning director would be appropriate. Discussion between and among yourselves is probably inappropriate.
Thank you.
Okay. Next.
Motion to adjourn?
No, there's one more.
Oh, there is?
One more. 23.
We can adjourn now. It's fine.
I'm sorry. E. Public hearing 8E, case number P&Z 2013-23. An ordinance number 13-17, an ordinance adding as permitted principal uses to the Town of Taos Code, section 16.16.120 for the R14 multifamily residential zone to allow as permitted principal uses professional office service, specialty retail establishment, and other commercial uses that are compatible and complementary in scale and appearance with the residential environment, and provide business services or office facilities to residents of the neighborhood. Ms. Perkins.
Okay, the R14 zone is multifamily residential, and if you look at the code, it says the intent is R14 zone is intended for multifamily dwelling units and essentially residential urban areas where municipal water and wastewater services are supplied. Mixed use is encouraged in the R14 zone. However, when you look at the permitted principal uses, you have a multifamily residence, single-family dwelling, two-family attached or semi-attached residence, and then home occupation. Those are the only uses that are allowed as permitted uses, even though the intent of the R14 multifamily residential zone is not only for multifamily dwelling units, but also for mixed use. So a lot of the downtown businesses I've noticed since I've been here are in the R14 zone. A lot of them are grandfathered in. Some of them, I don't know, maybe have evolved over time. But I got the wondering if we shouldn't consider making a code change that allows, like, for professional offices in the R14, personal service establishment, specialty retail establishment, and other commercial uses that are compatible. and complementary to the multifamily use of the zone. And so I'm bringing it before you. I stand for questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Perez.
Those are allowed under conditional use, right?
This would make them allowed as a principal use.
Right, would allow them by right. And I did not include uses like restaurants, just because the hours are longer and they require more parking. So what I'm really trying to do is allow things that are more compatible with residential housing.
One of the problems I see with that is somebody has a home and they decide they want to turn it into a small restaurant. Well, now that becomes a commercial building, or would it become a commercial building, then it has to
I don't believe we're including a restaurant, right?
well, or a professional building is still a commercial building.
A dental office or
A dental
doctor's
office,
yeah.
now that becomes a commercial building, now it falls under different codes, you have to have exit signs, you have to have, there's a lot of other things involved. I think that's the intent of the conditional use, isn't it?
I think if you, up to 20% of a building can be an accessory use. So that wouldn't necessarily change the use of a building. Spaces under 50 occupants don't require fire alarm systems and exit signs. So I think if the scale of that use triggered any of those changes, then they would have to take that through the building process.
Well, I don't see that either, because we've had a prior case that a residence became a office building, and it was required to have handicap access, handicap parking, but not a handicap bathroom.
So what happens is if you trigger a change of use in a building, so if the use is big enough, so if you change the use of the entire building from a residence to an office, then you go through an official change of use. If it's one use within a bigger building, it can be classified as an accessory use, and it doesn't change the use of the building.
You don't have to provide bathrooms for some businesses.
And it depends. That depends on the scale of the space that you're looking at. So there's building code provisions that someone would still have to go through. So how would we classify that if I'm in a multifamily building? There's 10 other units in mine, and I want to have a professional office in my building. I come to the Planning and Zoning Department. I may not have to go before the Planning and Zoning Commission as a conditional use, but the building department would have to know when that triggers a building permit or a change of use. So I think the burden of that would be the building department. And all that does is that takes that application process out of the Planning and Zoning Commission, so they don't have to come before us and do 2 hearings and public notices and all the other things.
Right.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Lukes.
Ms. Perkins, I think this is a great idea because that will eliminate a lot of applications for conditional use permits. And obviously the businesses that should fall into this would be businesses that sleep at night, which would not include restaurants or cafes, or that pretty much close 5, 6, 7 o'clock. So offices, professional offices, and the likes. Definitely not restaurant, because I think it would be toxic to the neighbors. I'm in support of it.
Any other comments or issues from commissioners?
I think it highlights exactly what it says the intent and purpose is in the first part of the section, which is that mixed use is encouraged. And I think that's what this does. So
Yeah, but now
I think it's great.
it's going to be acceptable.
I think the uses that you've listed here, I think fit that requirement. Personal service, professional office would fit. Specialty retail establishment like a gallery or a studio. Some of the things don't fit. delicatessen meat or fish market, personal service retail like health spa or fitness club, kennel, photo processing, personal storage. So I think we might edit this a little bit further to the ones that would fit within a residential zone, especially if we're going to allow it by right, without public notice.
Yeah,
but
on the last one, it says other commercial uses that are compatible, and I pulled this right out of the code section, like under CBD, but excluding appliance stores, automobiles. So that's the exclusions.
Right.
But we could add to that, and
I think I might just limit some of the language up under personal service. I think those are the ones that stood out. Oh, I'm sorry, excluding commercial parking lot, dry cleaning. That's a little, I think the sentence there could be more clear.
right.
Excluding the following: parking lot, dry cleaning, health spa, fitness. All those things are excluded. Yeah.
Okay, I
Okay.
agree.
But I'm in support of the overall intent of the ordinance. Any other questions?
I have
Entertain a motion. Commissioner Lukes.
Motion to approve case number 2013-23 and move it to the final, based on findings of facts and staff report, and move it to the final hearing on December 4th.
Second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. I would encourage the commission, if they have specific language that they'd like to insert or delete from any of these ordinances, that they come to the next meeting with that prepared. Are there any other matters from Planning and Zoning Commission?
I have a question for Ms. Perkins.
Commissioner Lukes.
In a hypothetical situation, if I were to annex land that includes a mobile home park, what zoning would I go for?
Yes, we've talked about this.
Yeah, so if we can look into it and find out where to stuff it.
The R14 may work. There is the conditional use section there for going higher density. We may have to make a zone, and that's what got me. This R14, and then looking at all the commercial zones, and then looking at the mobile home park issue, got me to start working on that use index to look at all our zones and what's allowed, because we have some gaps, and then we have some very slight
Overlays.
differences between certain zones. The problem is that we have land zoned that right now, and so then we're talking about rezoning existing properties, which starts to get a little dicier. On the other hand, we have these rezonings we have this annexed land that we're going to have to be rezoning, and so I kind of wanted to look at the overall zoning, like you're talking about.
Right, and I would
Because
appreciate
we have-
knowing, because it's a real case scenario. So we'll
Right.
talk, I guess.
Right.
Okay.
And I have an idea or two, but I think we may need a text change, or text amendment, a code change.
Thank you.
Yes.
I move to adjourn.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Thank you, Ms. Perkins, for all your hard work. There's a
Thank
lot
you.
of diligent staff reports there, and it's a lot of important issues for us to assess.
For sure.
I didn't have that last case. I didn't get a copy of the last case.
Oh, here.
Here, I have an extra one.
What's that?
I have an extra one.
You have an extra one? Yeah.